Welcome to the Know, I'm Meg Turney. Here's your roundup for Thursday. Fallout 4's biggest DLC has a release date and a brand new trailer. You can take your special brand of irradiated justice to Fahaba on May 19th for the low price of just $25. The new trailer shows off swampy foglight scenes of Far Harbor, which Bethesda is calling their largest landmass ever in a DLC. And nothing brings the kids out like giant landmasses. The whole thing is giving off the Point Lookout vibe from Fallout 3, which Jeremy said yesterday on the patch, if you were watching. It could be a very, very good thing or a very, very bad thing, depending on how you felt about that particular brand of DLC. In Far Harbor, you're tasked with finding a young woman for Valentine's detective agency. Now, of course, this task has you navigating a conflict between a secret group of synths, a large congregation of the Children of Adam, fuck those guys in particular, the local townspeople, and probably more than a few Bethesda bugs. Say Levy. And more news from Bethesda, they announced along with Arcane Studios that Dishonored 2 will be coming out November 11th. The full gameplay reveal will take place at Bethesda's pre-E3 showcase, giving us our first glimpse of the major differences between playing as Corvo or Emily. Now, the studios also announced some of the voice cast lists featuring actors from Daredevil and Game of Thrones. Not a big surprise because every actor in existence is on Game of Thrones now, and they seem to be in every video game too. However, the cast will include Vincent Big Baby D'Onofrio, Rosario Dawson, Pedro Pascal, Oberon, you'll remember him, R.I.P. No spoilers. And also Sam Rockwell. As for whether or not they're worried about taking a risk with players choosing to play through the game with either characters, Arcane Studio isn't worried, saying in a recent interview with Game Informer, if you make all your decisions based on what you think is selling well, you end up with this kind of indistinct mess. Now, speaking, of course, of indistinct messes, Valve has finally taken some measures to clean up Steam reviews and make them more useful. Earlier this week, the company announced the updates via its blog, stating that the main purpose was to better reflect the current experience of a particular game. Now, that way, if a game changes over time, especially after the mob has negative review bombed it, for whatever reason, a new gamer might get a better informed review. Now, to achieve this, Valve is making sure that they only post the most recent reviews that have been helpful and make them the most prominent. Other changes will be giving the game a recent review score made up from ratings over the previous 30 days. It will also be easier now for reviewers to disclose whether or not they got the game they were reviewing for free. Good guy Valve, cleaning up those reviews. Now let's just, clean up more of that greenlight program, if you please. Microsoft's Universal Windows platform has been getting negative review bomb from developers around the industry over the last few months. See how we tied that in there? Most notably from Epic CEO Tim Sweeney. After his open letter to Microsoft back in March accused Microsoft of trying to create a PC gaming monopoly, Sweeney is back at the dislike button once again. Speaking at GamesBeat Summit this week, Sweeney said that nobody is adopting UWP except the small group of developers Microsoft is paying to do so. He also accused Microsoft of being in propaganda mode about UWP and even used the age-old analogy of a frog slowly boiling in water, pointing out how Facebook used its closed ecosystem to boil a bunch of companies without them even knowing it. That's kind of one of those rants that reveals a lot more about the person ranting than what they're ranting about. Maybe, depends on what side of the issue you fall on, really. What did Facebook ever do to you, Tim Sweeney? I want to know. Show us on the doll. Dragon Ball fans could point to a million places on their Goku dolls where a terrible movie, Dragon Ball Evolution, hurt them and their souls. And after 7 years of soul searching and probably extensive therapy for all of us, the screenwriter of Evolution has finally apologized to fans over the mess he made of the film. Speaking via email with the writer of an upcoming fan book, screenwriter Ben Ramsey claimed the movie marked a new low creative point in his life, which is so sad, saying, "At the end of the day, it all comes down to the written word on page, and I take full responsibility for what was such a disappointment to so many fans. I did the best I could, but at the end of the day, I dropped the Dragon Ball." Oh man, give that guy a senzu bean for his heart. And also, amazing pun, we forgive you. We don't. On the opposite end of the review spectrum, Marvel's Civil War is knocking it out of the park, which we did cover yesterday, by the way, if you're up to date on your know. According to the directors, Joe and Anthony Russo, the follow-up Avenger flicks, which will be Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2, are going to be retitled soon. The name change is coming from an interview with Uprocks, where the director said that calling the movies Part 1 and Part 2 don't really give it the right vibe. For them, it's not one movie split into two, but two very different films, both in structure and in scope. Because of that, the name Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2 could be misleading to fans. So it kind of sounds like code for don't expect much of Thanos in Part 1, but maybe we'll get some Chris Pratt, so we'll call it even. We'll no doubt be getting tons of alien life forms and Infinity Guardians of the Civil War, or whatever you end up calling those films, but that's still not the case IRL. Even though we have yet to find signs of technologically developed life outside the stars, scientists have developed a new equation demonstrating how unlikely it is that humans are unique snowflakes. In a new report published this week, scientists state that the odds of us being the only outlier anywhere to be 1 in 10 billion trillion. Apparently that's a real number. That's a lot of zeros, I'm sure. This equation is based on the 1961 Drake equation, which gives the probability of other developed civilizations, coupled with Kepler data, which suggests that 1 in 5 stars has habitable Earth-type planets. So there's either tons of aliens out there just waiting to be found, or we're utterly alone in the universe. Thanks, science. That's how I feel inside. Speaking of loneliness, great transition, one man just set a new world record for the longest time spent in virtual reality. This is happening. This week, Derek Westerman of YouTube channel Super Deluxe entered the Guinness Book of World Records after logging 25 straight hours plugged into the HTC Vive. Because of the way GBWR's rules work, Westerman had to spend the entire time in a single application, so he chose Google's Tilt Brush for his dive into insanity. The record was for one single session, so he wasn't allowed to take the headset off, to eat food, or even go to the bathroom. Now, fortunately, helpers were there to assist him by feeding him slices of pizza, and we don't know how he did the bathroom stuff, but I'm sure he did it. Good for you, man. Hey, congrats, Derek, on holding the world record for most time spent drawing dicks and boobs in VR. We salute you. I'm sure that'll be a nice pickup line for somebody someday. All right, guys, that's it for Thursday's Roundup. Let us know what you would draw for 25 hours in virtual reality, and tell us why it's boobs. For future updates for all the things you love around the interwebs, like this video and subscribe to the Now. What is this? Dion Frio? Diano Frio? Sure. Microsoft's Windows Universal... Oh, there's 2 windows in there. Which one is it? Will no doubt be treated to tons of alien life forms and Infinity Guardians of the Civil War. Ha ha ha, I see what I did. You may all continue your jobs now. Thank you very much. Thank you.